The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, and welcome to Generations United's Learning Network webinar entitled European Year for Active Aging and Solidarity Between Generations, an overview of events and activities. I'm Leah Bradley, and I am a program specialist at Generations United. And with me also is Sherry Steinig, Deputy Executive Director of Generations United. We will be moderating this webinar today. Generations United works to improve the lives of children, youth, and older people through intergenerational practice and public policies. We share resources and connect practitioners around the U.S. and the world. One of the ways that we do that is through our website, e-newsletters, and these webinars. This is the second webinar in our current series on intergenerational issues made possible with a grant from MetLife Foundation. We will continue our monthly webinars through April of 2013. Please watch the calendar on our website or our e-newsletter for more information on upcoming learning and networking opportunities. I'm going to quickly go through some additional housekeeping items before I turn over our webinar to our presenters for today. First, we have over the last few webinars experienced some challenges with this system. I want to alert you there may be a delay when we move through the slides. Our speakers will keep going though, and the slides will eventually catch up. Second, for anyone who may be having difficulty hearing, you can listen through your computer speakers, or you can also dial in and listen from your phone. Third, there'll be time for your questions and or comments. Please use the question or chat function to ask them at any time. The questions will come to either myself or Sherry, and we will make sure to ask them of our presenters. Most of our questions will be answered at the very end of the webinar. And finally, please take a few minutes to complete the short survey you see when you leave the webinar. We rely on your feedback and comments to plan our future webinars. Today's presenters are Julie Melville and Vicki Titterington, and we are thrilled to have both of them joining us today. Julie is our first speaker. Originating from Vancouver, Canada, Julie moved to England in 2002 to pursue a career within the voluntary sector, working with older adults. After this, she moved into intergenerational practice, starting as a case manager for an intergenerational scheme, Home Share, before moving on to become program and service coordinator for a local community center that had an intergenerational approach. Since joining the Beth Johnson Foundation, Julie has been undertaking two roles. One is the project coordinator for EMIL, which is the European map of intergenerational learning, and the other as a PhD student studying the UK's first purpose-built intergenerational center. Following Julie's presentation, Vicki Titterington will share specific intergenerational programs occurring in Northern Ireland. Vicki graduated from Queen's University Belfast in 2005 with a BA in Sociology and Social Policy. She started in finance and administration, working in a community center in East Belfast, and then became leader of the older people group and helping out with the after schools youth club and work. She joined the Beth Johnson Foundation as a part-time intergenerational worker and progressed to full-time employment as Northern Ireland Intergenerational Project Coordinator with the Center for Intergenerational Practice, raising awareness of the practice, offering training and support for groups to become involved in its initiatives, and managing two intergenerational small grant projects. Vicki is now manager of Linking Generations Northern Ireland. And before Vicki and Julie get started, we're going to play a video that this is from a contest held during this past year, which is the European Year of Active Aging and Intergenerational Solidarity. If you have any trouble hearing the video, know that this will be up on our website where we'll have all our slides as well as this recording, and you'll get to watch it on your time.
Imagine we started out old, and grew younger. Would we still move people on, just for having some fun? Would we still get impatient and treat people as though they had less to offer, just because they were getting on a bit? Would we still ignore them, as though they were invisible? Shouldn't we reverse our attitudes and see the person, not the age?
So this video you just saw is just one of the many activities that occurred over this past year. So now I'm going to turn over the presentation to Julie Melville, who's going to talk more about this special European year that has been happening in 2012.
Great. Hi, thank you very much, Leah. And a big thank you for inviting me to come along and speak today. So the next slide, if you can, Leah. Right. So my name is Julie Melville. I'm the project coordinator for EMIL. Today, I've just listed here a very general idea of what I wanted to cover in the next 20 minutes, hopefully. Essentially, I just wanted to touch on the importance of intergenerational learning, provide you with an overview of EMIL and what our network is about, highlight some of the significance of EY 2012, and I'll refer to it as that, as the European Year on Active Aging and Intergenerational Solidarity is a mouthful. And then hopefully, time permitting, provide you with some examples of the activities that are going on throughout Europe this year. Next slide. So what do we mean by intergenerational learning? We mean that it's a process through which individuals of all ages acquire skills and knowledge, but also attitudes and values. So essentially, beyond the transfer of knowledge, EMIL believes that intergenerational learning fosters reciprocal learning, relationships between the generations, and it helps to develop social capital and social cohesion in our aging societies. So the network has decided to focus on this because we feel that the links between intergenerational learning, research, and policy are really key to the development of intergenerational practice throughout Europe, and really to the integration of intergenerational learning into relevant policy areas. Next slide. So what is EMIL? Basically, it's an intergenerational learning network. We were established in 2009. We use the existing expertise of partner organizations that are already working in the field to create a collaborative learning network for others involved in intergenerational programs throughout Europe. So through this supporting regional and global networking strategies, we've begun to provide an overview of the role and hopefully the status of intergenerational learning and intergenerational practice in broader terms throughout Europe. So as the logos indicate there on the bottom right-hand corner, we're funded by the Vicki Foundation. They've provided funding for the past 3 years, and we've just secured an additional 2 years of funding. And we're hosted by the Beth Johnson Foundation, which is my employer. Next slide, please. So who makes up EMIL, and what are we really about? We're a network based on a collaborative and cooperative. At the moment, we have approximately 350 members. Now, what we mean by members, 2/3 of them are organizations, and about another third is made up of individuals who are interested in intergenerational learning. Many of our members are involved with local, national, and European projects with experience or interest in intergenerational learning. However, there's been a different trend now. We've noticed a significant increase in members who are new to the field and have really joined to glean some experience and knowledge from our current members. We are a European network. We have encouraged mainly European membership so far, but that is now changing, and we're welcoming international members. Currently, our international members make up at least 20%, and that is actually on the rise. The majority of our new members are international. the majority of them are from the US. So I would certainly encourage anybody that's listening to join the network if they've not already done so. Next slide, please. Just briefly on this topic, what we hope to achieve in the next 2 years, and if we receive further funding, what we hope to achieve in the future. So overall, our aim is to provide a resource for practitioners, for policymakers, and researchers in the field to support the future development of intergenerational learning, which will hopefully ensure existing practices and are well documented and hopefully disseminated. Next slide, please. So what do we actually provide? So we've developed a library of resources to support members with the development and promotion of their work and to promote good practice examples of other organizations' resources. So below you'll see a list that's available to all members. So as you can see, our resources include national profiles, which highlight key trends and initiatives in EMIL member countries, case studies that provide examples of good practice, recommended links to other organizations that are connected to intergenerational learning. So with this, you can search on the resource button, which is below there. You can search by country, you can search by theme or keywords. So I think what I want to stress at this point here is that it's available to all members and visitors of the site. There's no discrepancy about who can access any of the information. The only difference is that I would welcome you to join as a member, because once you're a member, you are welcome to submit your own resources here. So if you wanted to write up a case study, you wanted to write a short discussion paper, as a member of EMIL, you'd submit it to me, and I'd be able to put that online for you. So only members are able to do that. Next slide, please. One of the unique, or we think is unique about EMIL, is that we provide thematic working groups. And basically, it's one way of working. We've decided to work within a number of subtopics or themes that network members were interested in exploring and felt should be considered in more detail. At our last meeting in Lisbon, the members felt that this would be a really good way to work together, and we really wanted to focus on a few key issues. So at the moment, the thematic working groups are made up of about 5 or 6 people, and that's done in order to establish stronger links between members. And it's an innovative way of working, especially within a larger network, and it provides a sort of effective way to deliver outputs, and it builds on what existing members are already interested in, which makes it a little bit easier to contribute. Obviously, I don't have a lot of time here to go into detail. At the moment, we have 5 thematic working groups that are busy doing different pieces of work. You can look on our website. There's a direct link to the thematic working groups. If you're interested in joining one of them, there are leaders on the section you can look at, and you can submit a comment to them, and they will get back to you. Their emails are there. And again, if you're interested and you are a member, if there's not a topic there that you're interested in, for example, you can submit it to me if you had a few people that were interested in doing something together, and I would coordinate that for you. So again, there's 5 themes at the moment, and I won't really go into all of them. 2 of them, for example, are the labor market and employment, and the one that I lead is around intergenerational community development and intergenerational settings. Next slide, please. So, as part of EMIL's contribution to EY 2012, which I'll explain a little bit more about the history of that in a minute, we are hosting a series of roundtable events. We've got approximately 10 events that are being held throughout Europe by EMIL members. And these events bring together an invited audience of mainly younger and older people, but we've also included a few professionals in the field. And we've asked them to consider a number of key questions from their national perspective. 1,500 euros, which I think equates to about $2,000 American, was awarded to 10 successful applicants. You can have a look at at the bottom there's a link. You can look there at the successful applicants, the organizations that did win the awards, and look at their bios and so on. So each event was going on throughout October and part of November. They're asked to submit a summative report, which is about their discussions and some key recommendations for what the group felt was important for creating a society for all ages. These reports will be very shortly listed on the website, the same link below there. you'll be able to have a look. That should be out by the end of November. These reports will then be drawn together into a European comparative study that will detail a national perspective on the value of and potential for intergenerational relationships and engagement. I'm hoping to come to the GU conference and present the final product, so I hope many of you will attend that if I'm able to come and to get some more information on that. Next slide, Leah, please. So the EY 2012 year, I'm going to just give you a little bit more information about the history of what it is. It probably will give you a bit of a perspective on that and the significance of that. So since 1983, the EU has chosen a theme of action each year that they think informs the widest audience possible, and it attracts the attention of governments on a particular issue. So topics have certainly been diverse. I can't really go into all of them, but they're always of general interest to the European institutions and member states, and they're always subjects of major concern. So European years constitute an awareness campaign at both the European and national levels. Topics are always chosen several years in advance by the European authorities, and the European Commission is responsible for their implementation. So after celebrating in 2011, it was the European Year of Volunteering. They decided to declare this year the European Year for Active Aging and Solidarity Between the Generations, with the hope really that it would tackle the challenges facing the ever-aging population of Europe. Next year will be the European Year of Citizens, just as an aside. Great. So basically, it's been suggested that in response to the demographic challenges that all EU member states are facing, EY 2012 will promote innovative solutions to the economic and social challenges facing the aging population in Europe, and really help to empower older people to stay in good physical and mental health and contribute to the labor market and their local communities. So very briefly, I'll just tell you who's been involved in the year so far. So EY 2012 has a coalition that we're really responsible for lobbying for and promoting the year, and that includes about 50 European organizations. Participating countries there's been 27 EU member states that have been involved, also Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway. So the way the process works is that each EU member state appoints a national coordinator who organizes national activities and helps promote local and regional activities, and tries to involve all the relevant stakeholders in their country in the European year. Next slide, please. So I won't go into too much detail here, except for to say that similar to much of the Western world, the EU's population structure is changing and becoming progressively older. At the beginning of 2010, there were over 87 million people aged 65 and over in the EU, which constitutes about 17.5% of the total population. So obviously there's a concern and debate about how much the working population is going to be increasingly asked to pay for the needs of an expanding group of older adults. So in response to these demographic challenges laid out in the report, which I've left the link there for you to look at, the European Commission designated 2012 as the European Year for Intergenerational Solidarity. Next slide, please. So this one is a special survey. The links are here as well. I won't go into too much detail, but this is a really unique survey that has been in the EU. So in relation to the year, the European Commission carried out an extensive survey on active aging in order to really understand the citizens' views and attitudes towards older people, what they thought about the contribution of older people in the workforce, and also how to best promote active aging, basically. So I'm just going to highlight 2 or 3 really interesting and relevant statistics from this survey. The link is available here. You can look at it online. It's a really interesting survey. So I'm going to go through about 3 or 4 main points here. So the majority of Europeans, over 70%, are aware that the population is getting older, but over 40% of the population don't think it's a concern in Europe. And obviously most Europeans, it was over 90%, believe that older people play a major role in society. Now, however, many of the population that was surveyed felt that there are limited opportunities now for older and younger people to meet and exchange ideas. So almost 2/3 of the population agreed that there were no opportunities for older people to meet. More than half of the population surveyed felt that the government was doing a poor job in promoting a better understanding between younger and older people. And 90% of the population believe that local authorities should be supporting associations and various initiatives to foster stronger relationships between the generations. Next slide, Leah, please. So I'm really not going to go into too much detail over the next slide, except to say that these are some of the main issues that the European Commission expects from the year. I've already touched on most of this, so you can obviously have a read through later, but these are three of the main points that the European Commission always talks to when they're talking about what they expected from the year. Okay, next slide. So in this next slide here, I've included a list of what I think is some useful links. This is some of the information that I used when I did the presentation. So the EUI 2012 Coalition has produced a number of really interesting documents. The first two are listed there for you to have a look at. There's an EY 2012 official website, which is an excellent website to look at different activities that are going on. And the AGE platform official website. AGE is a major organization made up of hundreds of older people's organizations in Europe, and they were probably the most crucial lobbyists for 2012. And again, they have a number of documents on their website that you should definitely have a look at if you have the chance and are interested. Okay, next slide, Leah. So I just wanted to save a little bit of time to go through this. I thought this might be one of the more interesting points to look at. So as Leah mentioned at the beginning, there are hundreds of projects and initiatives that are happening throughout Europe this year. They're still going on. They're just starting to wrap up now. I just chose 4. I'll give you a quick paragraph on each with a link I thought were quite interesting. And then the last one at the bottom there is the link to look at all EY 2012's initiatives that are listed at the European Commission level. So if you go to the bottom link there and click on that, you can actually go through everything that's available. You can search for those. So by country, you can look by region or topic and spend hours on there, really. Okay, so the first one there is Generations at School project. So since 2009, Europe has celebrated a European Day of Solidarity between the generations, which has always been scheduled on April the 29th. So during the weeks around April the 29th of this year, all schools in Europe were invited to open the doors of their classrooms to older generations in the hopes that they would explore with students how a better society for old and young could be built, and then let them reflect on what they thought they could learn from each other. The last time I looked at this project, we had about 168 schools throughout Europe that were involved. The findings aren't out, and I'm not sure if they're doing a final report on that, but you'd be very interested to look at some of the schools that were involved throughout Europe. The second one is called Life Story Challenge. Participants were asked to create a life story about someone that they knew, someone that they called an active ager, so who is continuing to live life to the full was the target. Participants, so younger adults, were asked to use photos and stories that they had collected and to tell the story of that person's life and what they're doing now. So the best entries from each country were chosen. They'll win a prize, and the overall winner will be invited to go to Brussels to receive a prize at the end of this year when the EY 2012 closing ceremony is happening during the European Awards ceremony. And you'll see who's chosen relatively soon. The third one is a video challenge. So every year the committee organizes a video challenge to boost video creativity and the use of social networking among younger people throughout Europe. So this year the subject was, be creative and show us what Europe means to you. So the 2012 edition of this referred to EY 2012 by encouraging generations to get together to submit projects that depict European intergenerational viewpoints. The 3 awarded videos were done at a ceremony in Brussels in March, and you'll be able to look at that link there and see those videos. And finally, the second edition of the Intergenerational Film Festival which is actually taking place right now, runs from the 14th to the 17th of November in Belgium, and it aims to present different aspects linked to relationships between the generations. I had the opportunity to go to this last year, and it was a fantastic event. The videos are in all different languages from different cultures, and the event really allowed the general public in to understand the issues of aging and intergenerational solidarity through film. And as I said, the last link there, I've said you go to that. It lists all the initiatives that have been sent into the European Commission on EY 2012. Next slide. So basically, I just wanted to say thank you very much for, we've gone right into Vicki's, for listening to my part, and now my colleague Vicki, I think, is going to take over.
Hello, my name's Vicki Titterington, and I'm really happy to be involved in this webinar today. Linking Generations Northern Ireland is an initiative of the Beth Johnson Foundation. We would be the Northern Ireland branch almost of the Centre for Intergenerational Practice. We are core funded by the Atlantic Philanthropies, and we were officially launched in 2009 following a successful local pilot programme. So really, I wanted to sort of express that Linking Generations Northern Ireland is the only initiative in Northern Ireland that solely promotes work between the generations and intergenerational practice. We would see ourselves as an advocate supporting others to engage in intergenerational approaches. Our focus, our overall focus for our work at the minute is social justice, and we have broken social justice down into 4 themes. And those 4 themes you can see on the screen at the minute is age-friendly, intergenerational equity and equality, safer, shared and confident communities, and intergenerational aspects of building the peace, which is quite relevant to Northern Ireland. So really, we work across 3 levels, which would be community, organisational and lobbying, and we recognise that without working from that bottom-up approach, it is very difficult to achieve a sustainable impact and a change. So just to read out some of the, when we talk about working at community, we would talk about developing and promoting opportunities to bring generations together and build capacities within communities to sustain this approach. And I have put beside the community connections bit there some of the things that we do, which is awareness raising of intergenerational approaches, small grants which we would give out, training we would provide, development support to people wanting to engage, and also networking opportunities. Our organisational, we would see supporting the statutory, private and voluntary sectors to recognise the potential of all age approaches and to embed them within their strategies, practices and policies. So we would be a very important linkage initiative where we would work with maybe age-specific organisations to link them up, encourage partnership working, deliver organisational-specific training, and we also create a newsletter which keeps everybody in touch with what's going on. Our lobbying, we encourage lobbying, bringing it up from community level right up to that decision-making level. So from community level, looking at projects that are maybe happening on the ground and going to policymakers and promoting that further for people. So encouraging lobbying and influencing the government to provide support and commit to all age approaches to address ageism and age segregation in society. And obviously, as Julie has mentioned before, the European year has really been a brilliant opportunity for us to look at our normal work, but also to promote that further. So it was a great platform for us. Next slide, please. So to talk a wee bit about the core work of Linking Generations, which is funded through our Atlantic money, we would provide training, which would be, we would look at introductory training, so people would come along. We do it on a regional basis. Northern Ireland is quite small, so we would host 4 a year. Introductory training would look at the nuts and bolts of setting up a project. It helps build capacity within communities for people to take on approaches on their own with additional support from Linking Generations. The training session is open to older people, young people, organisations, practitioners, and also local authorities. And that training can then sort of be backed up with, we have a social justice training, which is linked to our small grant scheme. And the social justice training then looks at how intergenerational projects can address those harder issues. And what we do is we build on the expertise in the room, and we get people to come up with ideas for intergenerational projects in their area that might address those themes. But what we do is we won't accept applications from people for small grants unless they've attended the training, so that we ensure that people know that we know what we want, what we're looking for through those projects. Partnership working is a big thing for Linkage Generations, and as we see ourselves as the intergenerational experts in Northern Ireland, but we also recognise that it's important for us to form partnerships to have a bigger impact for our work. Cooperation Ireland, we would partner with them to deliver our peace building theme, as they would be the organisation that has a good lot of experience in Northern Ireland to do with peace building. The Department of Justice, which is a government department, has worked with us very closely. It's been a 4-year process, basically, of working up from community projects right through to research, which we'll talk a wee bit about later. They would be our partners in safer, shared and confident communities. We also work with the Youth Council for Northern Ireland, the Workers' Educational Association, which is about intergenerational learning. We have a current project with them to do with digital inclusion. And also Belfast City Council, on our age-friendly work stream, as Belfast is the first Northern Ireland city to sign the Declaration for an Age-Friendly City. We've also had an opportunity, because of the European year, to have specific work strands because of the year, and also to host some events. And obviously our lobbying opportunity because of this year has been really, really good, and we have contacted a lot of the ministers in government and been involved in quite a lot of high-profile events. Next slide, please. So really what I wanted to do was, my slides are mostly photographs, and I think the photographs help me tell the story around some of the initiatives that we've been involved in. The next slide, which will come up, is our Is It Fair event. On this event, oh sorry, no it's not. This is I've just put this picture in. This is an example of one of our training sessions. So you can see there's they're working actually on perceptions of older and younger people. And then if you go to the next slide. The next slide is an example of an actual intergenerational project. And it was actually a project between older people in sheltered accommodation and young people from a youth forum. So they did cookery. And if you want to go to the next slide. So the next slide is our Is It Fair event, and we focused it on intergenerational equity. And it was our event we used to launch our input for the European year. And basically what we focused it on was we used a lot of the questions. Julie was talking earlier about the Eurobarometer. So we used some of the questions for that, and we also used questions around things that might be specific to Northern Ireland. For example, looking at the bus pass. In Northern Ireland, the bus pass is free for older people, but we asked questions such as, do older people need a bus pass more than younger people? We asked questions around, what age group do you feel is more discriminated against? But then we also asked questions around relationships and who should be responsible for promoting those, so schools, or the government, or what streams people should have available to them for meeting people of different generations. We did quite an interesting, we used an interesting method to actually gauge those views. We used Quizdom. It's like the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire keypads. So we put the statements up. People were sat at round tables, and they had to vote yes or no as to whether they agreed with the statement. They then discussed it for 5 minutes, and then they had to vote again. So some of the questions there was a good change in, which really sort of showing through that there was empathy between the generations, and it was probably a good thing to get people together to talk about those kind of issues. Now we do have a report, a paper report of that, and also a DVD. So if anybody is interested in either of those, you can contact us about it later. Next slide, please. So following on from the Is It Fair event, the importance of basically a voice for younger and older people on certain issues, we decided to host a series of intergenerational conversations. And the idea was that we would do it in different areas of Northern Ireland, and that our partners who had partnered with us in the event Is It Fair, which is the Age Sector Platform and the Northern Ireland Youth Forum, both organisations mirror each other and are about voice for younger or older people. So the importance of having them on board to recruit our older and younger people was very important, because it showed them a different way of working, and it also showed that a lot of the issues that they're lobbying for older and younger people are actually quite similar. So the intergenerational conversations that we held were recruited for the older and younger people were recruited by the Age Sector Platform and the Northern Ireland Youth Forum. And what we did was we used our own themes to host the conversations, so that in the future, hopefully for next year, we will have a list of priorities as to what way we might work on that. So for example, I'll just give you an example of some of the questions. The older and younger people were provided a pack in advance, giving them information about the themes: safer, shared and confident communities, peace building, age-friendly, and age discrimination and equity. So one of the questions would be, what are the key community safety issues where you live, and how could intergenerational work help or create a solution? And for peace building, what contributions can younger and older people together make to building the peace? Can you identify what is age-friendly about the area you live in, and also what is age-unfriendly? And can you give examples of age discrimination in the area where you live, which is bad, and also when it can be good? And can you think of a time when you were treated badly because of your age? So it's offering really an intergenerational voice on those issues, because it tends to be when people discuss them in their own age groups, the answers and their replies to those can be very different. So this is like a scoping exercise for us to hopefully get some priorities for work next year, which we can do with the Age Sector Platform and also the Youth Forum. So just like to go to the next slide. So the next slide is actually a demonstrator project that we did, really to show that our input during the European year. We have small grants, so our small grants would be operating and we would be supporting people to do them in communities, but we thought it would be nice for us to do one ourselves. And the project was actually in Uri, and the idea was that we would allocate some money to a group of younger and older people, and they could plan their own project, but that also the conversations element would be involved as Lincoln Generations output for it as well. So the younger and older people got together, and the young people from a youth forum, and they were peer educators, so they decided that they would like to teach the older people some of the things that they do within their youth group. And you can see the picture there is it's a sexual health session, which was a bit different, but it was something the older people had never done, and the young people facilitated it for them. And they also went bowling, and actually this coming Saturday we are going on a residential with the older and younger people, and we're going to do Come Dine With Me, so there's going to be a bit of cooking involved, and we're also going to have those more serious discussions. So it's just about giving older and younger people a bit of an ownership and seeing what the outcomes of that are, and also gauging the differences of older and younger people who don't know each other to discuss those issues, but then once they've had a period of time where they've been meeting up, how that might change as well. So ready for the next slide. So the next slide shows a picture of something that was specific to the European year. It was the European Youth in Action Fund, and now it is a youth work fund, and it's the first time that we have applied for it, as we're not a youth organisation. But the idea was that there should be responsibility on both age-specific sides to implement intergenerational approaches, and this is about getting young people and their youth workers together to look at how they might take on that role and what the priorities for ongoing work might be. So we had a residential, and we had the young people and the youth workers come up with ideas as to how we might run that residential and what the main elements of it would be. So the residential brought together young people and the youth workers, and it was looking at perceptions. So what perceptions do young people have of older people? What perceptions do they think older people have of them? And also the barriers to younger and older people doing work together. So it was about really a planning weekend of looking at how they might address those kind of perceptions, but also how we can roll out projects that are priority to each youth group. For example, one youth group would focus on employability and life skills, one would have been a community group, and one was gay and lesbian youth Northern Ireland. So they all have very, very different remits. From that Youth in Action event, we will have a report and a DVD that will be produced as well, so if anybody's interested in following up with that after, that would be available. We can go to the next slide. So The next slide is basically about our Safer, Shared and Conflict Communities work. And historically in Northern Ireland, there has been a strong link between intergenerational projects and community safety outcomes, probably because older people are very, very related to the fear of crime element of community safety, whereas young people are often seen as the perpetrators of antisocial behaviour. Now we have had a series of projects and small grant schemes which have been community safety funded. So initially it was funded on a local basis by some of the local authorities and councils where we've managed their grant schemes. Then it moved up to a regional basis where it was funded by the Department of Justice on a Northern Ireland-wide remit. So it really did give us the opportunity to raise awareness of intergenerational work, raise awareness of its benefits to community safety, and also to create an evidence base. So the last thing that we have just completed with the Department of Justice is they gave us funding to commission a piece of research. And what that research did was it compiled almost a proof and recognised the benefits of intergenerational approaches and how they can positively address community safety issues, giving it real clout, realising that it's not just nice fluffy projects, there is bigger impacts that come out of it. So to do with that piece of research, Lincoln Generations contacted the older and younger people's commissioners. So that's the young people's commissioner in the photograph, the lady in the red jacket, and we got a joint statement of support saying that they supported intergenerational approaches to community safety. The guy in the photo there, he's the Justice Minister, and he was very positive as well. And we hope that this research will offer us the chance to move forward, get more funding support from the Department of Justice, and take a more strategic approach to how we work at a regional level, but implement local actions. Next slide, please. So the last thing I want to talk about was it's a picture of a prototype project that was part of a project we did with Southern Ireland. So basically there's a lot going on. We're not that far away from each other, but very often there's not a lot of cross-border work that actually happens and a lot of sharing of ideas. So we partnered up with Lincoln Generations, partnered up with the European Year Coordinator for Southern Ireland, who was placed within the Department of Health. And the idea was that we would host an event which would create a legacy for the European Year. And Lincoln Generations recruited people from the north, and the Department of Health and Age and Well Network recruited people from the south. So we called it One Ireland, All Ages. And the idea was that we would bring people to a workshop, and they would work all day on sharing ideas, sharing learning and networking, but building prototype projects that could be archived and actually maybe put into practice in the next couple of years or in the future. And it was about us having that partnership link and bringing people from both North and South Ireland to work together. So that was a very successful event, and what they have produced is a One Ireland All Ages website. So all those ideas are up there, pictures from the event, people who attended. So if you are interested in finding out any more about that event, there's a website for that as well. So I'm going to finish with that. I know that was quite a rush through it all, but I hope it all made sense and was useful to you.
Thank you, Vicki, and thank you very much, Julie. Now's the time, folks on the phone, if you want to write in through the question function on your screen, if you'd like to write in any questions you have for either Julie or Vicki or both. This is the time. So, Vicki, I do have one question for you. In the work that you've done, what do you think has been the biggest challenge in getting support for the intergenerational programs throughout Northern Ireland?
I think the biggest thing is that people often see intergenerational work as something that is an addition. And it isn't an addition, it's just changing the way you work or enhancing the way you work. And quite often now what we're finding is pushing things, towards an all-age approach. It's not about people being older or people being younger, it's about people having similarities, people getting together to create a stronger voice. So I think, especially with the youth work strand of our work, it's often seen as something that youth workers have to do in addition to their own job. So I think that's probably one of the things that has held us back quite a lot.
So that's in terms of challenging for the actual staff implementing the programs. Have you found any challenges or barriers to participation by either older adults or youth?
I think you always have that. We have the benefit of working in Northern Ireland where we have made a specific point of actually accessing people within communities who would be community champions. You know, if you can access those people who can recruit for you, and we are very keen, you know, to hand over that kind of role to people. We will support them in the good practice and the planning of the projects, but it is very important that you start up a planning group. So quite often we would get an older person, a younger person, and also the community representative as our planning group, so that you have a support network all around for recruiting. I think that's probably one of the most important things when you're starting up an intergenerational project at local level.
Okay, good, thank you. And Julie, could you talk a little bit to the different themes and what is your product coming out of the working groups that you mentioned?
Sure. I missed the first part of the question because I think you were unmuting me at the time. The second part of the question was in regards to the thematic working groups.
Right. So could you share a little bit more about the different themes and then the product for those groups?
Sure, yeah. It's always easier to speak to my thematic working group. But yeah, I can certainly, at the moment we have 5 different groups, as I said. So the one I'm working on is intergenerational community and settings. So for example, in that group, I've attended a few different conferences that have specialized in intergenerational spaces, inside and out. We've submitted a number of concept papers that if you go onto the website, and underneath each thematic working group is a list of papers that we've written as a group. So each of those have probably 3 or 4 different groups, papers. Another example would be the translational research on intergenerational issues. We have 2 leads on that. And we are looking to work with actually you, I believe, in creating a repository of information. And in that one, I find it quite exciting. We've invited a number of academics to translate their research into 1 or 2 pages that practitioners can use, that's applicable research. And we've also invited practitioners to translate research that they've used in the field. So we're just in the beginning stages of that, but that's another initiative that we're working towards. We also have another thematic working group that I'm not as involved in. It's a political context for intergenerational cooperation and the social contract. At the moment, that one is only, I think it's created about 4 or 5 concept papers at the moment. Does that give you a bit of a flavor of the things that we're working on?
It does, absolutely.
Okay.
And then there's a question, just how often do folks involved in EMIL have the opportunity to get together and connect in person versus virtually if you're covering so many different countries?
Yeah, absolutely. The first 3 years of funding, we did have funding for us to get together. And that was obviously the best solution because I think nothing beats the one-on-one working. So we've had the chance to meet 3 times now as a group. And we're looking to have a conference next year where all EMIL members will be invited. Other than that, most of it is done virtually. We've organized, there's a project in Europe at the moment that we're trying to get involved in, and it's an international dialogue cafe. They have cafes in a number of city centers in Europe, and they're offering us the chance to use their facilities. So you go into that cafe, and it virtually sits you at a table with a number of colleagues in different countries. So we're just in the middle of trying to work on that in order for our thematic working groups to be able to meet on a regular basis or to allow members to sit down and have a discussion about a certain topic. So that's in the works at the moment. But that's our biggest challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine. Does anybody, if anybody else has any additional questions, please write them in at this time. What we're going to do is just do a few more notes on resources from Generations United, and then we'll just check back in to see if there's any questions before we sign off on this webinar.
Hi, this is Sherry Steinig from Generations United, and thank you, Leah, Julie, and Vicki. We're going to share some resources from Generations United, but I also just want to alert everyone that The link shared today, as well as the PowerPoints and a recording of this webinar, will be available at the Generations United website, which is www.gu.org. It's hopefully tomorrow we'll have everything up. There's often a little delay with the recording. If not, it'll be up early next week. So you should have access to all the great information that that Vicki and Julie shared about what's happening in Europe, because I think there's a lot that we can learn from the successes there and how to implement, join what they're doing from an American perspective, but also how to implement that here in the States. A couple of upcoming dates that we wanted to make sure everyone was aware of. The Generations United and MetLife Foundation instituted last year the Best Intergenerational Community Awards. The applications for the 2013 awards is due November 30th. We also have our conference coming up next year in 2013. The deadline for the call for proposals is December 1st. We also have an event coming up on December 4th. We're releasing a report on hunger and nutrition, what's at stake for children, families, and older adults. That event will be in Washington, D.C., but the report will be available on the 4th on our website. So if it's something that you're interested in, that will be available. There's also our next webinar will be on the 13th, and it'll be focusing on hunger and nutrition and some of the information shared in that report. So if you can't attend the event in D.C., be sure to sign up for the webinar on the 13th to get that information. And then again, just our conference dates for next year. It is an international conference, and I know that Julie and Vicki were both at our conference in 2011. I know that Julie's hoping to come again next year. We do have a strong international contingent that comes, so there will be a lot of information shared about what's going on around the world, not just around the States. And then just if you haven't already done so and you want to get more information about what's happening at Generations United, what's happening with our members, and also what's happening internationally, I want to encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter, Generation This Week. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. The links are there to join us, and again, we try to share news and information, research when we find it, funding opportunities, everything to help support the development of intergenerational initiatives. And then finally, here's contact information for the Generations United staff, as well as for Vicki, Julie, and how to join EMIL. And feel free to contact any of us if you have any additional questions, comments, want to get any more information. I just want to take another second that if there are any additional questions, we have a couple of minutes. If not, we can just end early. It's always good to end something early. So if there's any additional questions, Leah?
No additional questions have come in, but like Sherry said, feel free to email either Vicki or Julie directly with questions, and as always, contact Sherry or myself.
So I just want to, again, take just a second to really thank Julie and Vicki for spanning I think the 9 hours between all of us and our times making this work today. The information was fantastic. I think that we don't know enough here about what's always going on intergenerationally in other countries, and it's been phenomenal the work you guys have done this year. So thanks again for taking the time to share with us, and thank you all to everyone for joining us today. And we'll look forward to seeing you again and talking to you guys again in December at our next webinar.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.